Mysterious aliens called parasites suddenly begin their invasion when some of them infect humans by entering their brains. The movie begins at a grimy shore where countless parasites emerge and begin advancing toward a nearby city. In the midst of this, we encounter a husband and wife peacefully slumbering until a parasite infiltrates the man's ear. Initially, he endures intense agony, but eventually he settles. Meanwhile, a boy named Shinichi was enjoying tunes with headphones, barely dodges another parasite attempting to invade his ear. Instead, it seeks entry through his nostrils, prompting Shinichi to react by flinging it away, trying to dispatch it with a book. Sadly, the parasite nips his hand, prompting Shinichi to bind his hand with a cable to halt its advance. Upon hearing Shinichi's outcry, his mother arrives. She releases his hand, finding naught, chalking it up to his imagination, spurred by the tunes he was tuned to. Perplexed, Shinichi wonders where the worm has vanished, and the following dawn, Shinichi begins to sense peculiar tingles in his hand where the parasite had infiltrated. Simultaneously, a man who was initially infected by the parasite starts exhibiting odd behavior, and his mouth morphs into a creature with myriad eyes, and he abruptly devours his wife. Shinichi, accompanied by his friend Satomi, heads to school, but exhibits altered behavior and loses control of his right hand, leading to an awkward encounter with Satomi. During class, he displays unusual ability by effortlessly seizing a fallen rubber and sinking a basketball into a hoop from afar. Perplexed by his hand's ability, Shinichi turns to the web for answers, only to stumble upon an eye emerging from his hand. Startled, he ponders severing his hand, but it transforms into a menacing serpent that apparently dissuades him. The hand then morphs into a smaller creature, which discloses its failure and expresses a desire to learn to converse. Simultaneously, the parasite that took over the man's body earlier is glued to the television, learning human language while feasting on his wife. The next morning, Shinichi discovers the creature affixed to his hand, pursuing books and researching human data on his laptop. It elucidates that severing the hand won't suffice, as it's fused with Shinichi's cells. It is at this point that Shinichi begins to realize that he and this creature are now bound together. The creature, now dubbed Miji, assimilates knowledge from school and observes students honing combat skills. In the painting class, Shinichi experiences tension with Satomi, who issues a threat. Later, she scrutinizes his painting and exits quietly. News of mysterious vanishings and corpses spreads throughout the city, with only Shinichi aware of the parasitic menace. He beseeches Miji to communicate to other parasites not to slaughter and devour humans, but Miji insists that they require human sustenance, comparing it to how humans consume animals and plants. As long as Shinichi remains alive, Miji can subsist without harming humans. However, Miji warns that he will eliminate Shinichi if provoked, leaving Shinichi deeply perturbed. Meanwhile, the police stumble upon a parasitic cadaver, noting traces of human flesh consumption. Shinichi encounters another parasite at school and recognizes it, leading to an introduction to his new teacher, Tamiya Rokio, who's also a parasite. They discuss their unique circumstances and agree to convene later. Satomi witnesses their interaction, adding to the tension, and later Tamiya introduces Shinichi to Shimada and Mr. A. She informs Shinichi about a network of parasites coexisting harmoniously and exchanging information to stay concealed from humans while securing a food source. She encourages Shinichi to join them, setting the stage for further developments in their intricate world. However, Shinichi asserts that he's unlike them, labeling the parasites as abominations. Tamiya acknowledges this, conceding that they're indeed monstrous. She proceeds to recount an experiment she conducted with Mr. A, resulting in her conceiving. Since they are both parasites, they ponder the nature of the offspring gestating within her. Miji interjects, noting that they conducted the experiment within a human body, implying that their child is actually indeed human. She warns Shinichi not to oppose them, threatening to obliterate the entire school in a matter of seconds. This leaves Shinichi terror-stricken, and they all depart, leaving him shaken. Meanwhile, a serene house serves as the setting for Mr. A and Shimada, two parasites feasting on humans. They later rendezvous with Tamiya, who's experimenting on herself to acclimate to human life without consuming humans. Back at Shinichi's house, he was deeply troubled, but couldn't confide in his mother, who remains oblivious to the parasitic peril lurking outside. He advises his mother to stay indoors. Unbeknownst to her, Shinichi's anxieties are well-founded, and one night Mr. A confronts Shinichi, having discovered that he and Miji were responsible for dispatching a fellow parasites in a shop. Mr. A assaults Shinichi, but Miji intervenes, sparking a fierce battle between the two parasites. Amidst the struggle, Shinichi takes action, injuring Mr. A with an iron pipe, causing him to bleed. However, Mr. A manages to flee by vacating to his host's body, though he requires a new host to survive. Regrettably, Shinichi's mother unwittingly becomes Mr. A's new host when she crosses paths with him. Shinichi witnesses the harrowing turn of events, but it's arduous for him to accept the truth. Mr. A, now inhabiting Shinichi's mother's body, ruthlessly assaults Shinichi's heart, leaving a deep void in his chest before departing. With Shinichi on the brink of demise, Miji altruistically leaves part of himself within Shinichi to mend his heart, ultimately saving his life. Time elapses and Shinichi eventually rouses, but he finds scant joy in being alive. His world feels devoid of purpose. Consumed by sorrow, he sheds tears of despair. Shinichi arrives at Tamiya's spot, seeking answers about Mr. A's whereabouts. Tamiya feigns ignorance despite knowing the truth, and Miji informs her that Mr. A has now infiltrated Shinichi's mother's body, but Shinichi finds it challenging to accept this disclosure. In a tense confrontation, Shinichi wields a blade, but Tamiya intimidates both of them and departs without harming them. Meanwhile, the police discover Mr. A's lifeless body and investigate the circumstances. Back in school, Shinichi begins attending again and encountering Satomi, and their reunion is brief before another student, Shimada, arrives. Tamiya, having transferred him to the school, hints at more intricate developments, and in order to keep an eye on Shinichi, Shimada introduces himself to Satomi, claiming that they've just met Shinichi for the first time. After the brief encounter, Shimada departs, all the while under Tamiya's watchful gaze. In reality, both Shimada and Tamiya were investigating the changes occurring in Shinichi's body since Miji saved his life using his cells. Miji shares this information with Shinichi and informs him that he's also experiencing some difficulties since the life-saving act, including the need to sleep 4 hours daily, during which time he cannot assist Shinichi. Miji promptly falls asleep despite Shinichi's efforts to awaken him. Meanwhile, two police officers were attempting to identify parasites. They discover that snapping a hair from a host with a parasite causes the hair to become curly. To test this, Detective Hirama snaps the hair of his junior colleague, but it remains straight, indicating that he is not a host. Tamiya, too, learns of the human detection method through her network, realizing the potential threat it poses. In a separate subplot, a politician named Hirokawa becomes entangled with Tamiya and the parasites as well. Later, Shinichi encounters Satomi again, and she requests that he cook dinner for her given his newfound solitude. Agreeing to her request, they go shopping together, and along the way they encounter a deceased puppy in the road, and Shinichi, influenced by his evolving parasite-like thinking, disposes of the puppy, viewing it as nothing more than bones and flesh. Satomi was shocked by this, and their differing perspectives lead her to leave him. At their school, the principal was stunned to discover Tamiya's pregnancy, as she was unmarried. Consequently, he decides to terminate her employment and informs Tamiya's parents of the situation. Tamiya responds by killing her parents and then contacts Shimada, informing him that his next meal is ready. The following day, Tamiya begins packing her belongings at the school, and Shinichi approaches her for a conversation. Meanwhile, Satomi attends her painting class, where many girls work on a portrait of Shimada. Playfully, one girl breaks a strand of his hair, which becomes curly. This discovery exposes Shimada as a parasite. Panicking, Shimada attacks the girls, revealing his monstrous appearance, and causes them to scream in fear. Hearing their screams, Shinichi rushes to their aid, and Tamiya also realizes that Shimada has revealed his true form to everyone and starts preparing chemicals. During this chaos, Satomi summons her courage and throws a chemical at Shimada, causing him to catch fire. However, this only makes him more uncontrollable, leading to a rampage that threatens the lives of the girls. They attempt to escape, but one of Satomi's friends was tragically killed in the process. By this time, Shinichi arrives and several girls have already lost their lives, leaving him frightened. Miji encounters Shinichi to gather his courage and act, and Shinichi rises to the occasion and rushes to save Satomi, who is fleeing from the monstrous Shimada. Shinichi confronts Shimada and a fight ensues, and just as Tamiya arrives on the scene and tries to calm Shimada down, she throws a bomb and departs. Shinichi spots a bomb and jumps to safety with Satomi, and an explosion occurs. They assume that Shimada has perished, but in reality he has survived. The police and an ambulance arrive at the scene, where Satomi has been injured and is subsequently transported to the hospital. At this point, the police officers arrive at the scene, but Shimada attacks and kills them before making his way to the school's roof. Miji informs Shinichi of the situation, prompting Shinichi to move to another building, fashioning an iron rod into a makeshift bow. He then fires the iron rod at Shimada like an arrow, ultimately causing Shimada's demise. Afterwards, Shinichi starts to leave the area when Tamiya appears, informing him that she will be disappearing for a while. She provides Shinichi with Mr. A's address before leaving. Meanwhile, Detective Hirama arrives at the scene to investigate Shimada's death and discovers evidence suggesting that someone attacked him from a different building. And later on, Shinichi reaches the address provided by Tamiya and encounters his mother. He follows her to a location under a bridge where Miji falls asleep and informs Shinichi of this development, but only after forming a blade. Shinichi, now armed with Miji as a weapon, engages Mr. A in a fierce battle. During the fight, Shinichi was on the verge of killing Mr. A when he hears his mother's voice, and his mother's consciousness still exists, and she intervenes to protect Shinichi. Despite Mr. A's attacks, Shinichi's mother saves him with her own hands. But ultimately, Shinichi was forced to kill his own mother to defeat Mr. A. After some time, when Miji wakes up, Shinichi shares the heartbreaking story with him, and meanwhile, Hirokawa's party wins the election, granting him a prominent position as the mayor of the city. Simultaneously, Detective Hirama was approached by a special assault team officer named Yamagashi, who makes him sign a letter of confidentiality for a project called Human Life Protection, aimed at safeguarding humanity. Elsewhere, Hirokawa approaches Tamiya with a dangerous parasite named Gotobu, who harbors intentions of annihilating all of humanity. Tamiya, now concerned for her future child, faces a challenging dilemma. Meanwhile, Shinichi visits Satomi in the hospital and decides to embark on a mission to seek out and eliminate all remaining parasites. And the movie ends with an unknown individual recording Shinichi while he was talking with Miji. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch our next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you on the next one.